On the 21st of February 1944, an 18-year-old member of the French resistance was brought out to a fort in Paris for his execution. His crime had been defying the German occupation and in taking the fight to the occupiers and those agents who were working to bring such suffering to the French people. After the Germans captured France, there were many young men who joined the French resistance, and for various reasons they got involved in sabotage and destruction against the Germans. Some even carried out assassinations of high-value targets. But Wolf Wajbrot, despite his German-sounding name, was from Poland, and he left Poland after the German invasion and ended up in France, where he fought to try and oppose the German forces. But he paid the ultimate price for his crimes and actions, and he was executed by firing squad. In this video, we look at his interesting life and his execution. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Wolf Wajbrot was born on the 3rd of March 1925. He was born in Krasnik in Poland, and he attended school, but in the 1930s trouble would come in Europe. Adolf Hitler, the Nazi dictator, was flexing his muscles, and he was looking towards lands to conquer and then take. Poland was high up on that list, and despite being warned numerous times that a German invasion of Poland would bring about a new global conflict, Hitler pushed his forces into the country, and they then invaded. Within weeks, chaos came onto the streets, and the country capitulated and crumbled. Wajbrot, in the same year that the Nazis invaded, had gained his certificate to leave school, and he then began to work and train to become a mechanic. But he had left Poland along with his parents, and they settled in France, specifically in Paris. But the Germans and Nazis would follow them, and the Germans then invaded France as well. On the 10th of May 1940, Wehrmacht soldiers invaded parts of France, and then in codename Fall Gelb, or Case Yellow, the German armoured units pushed through the Ardennes region, crossed the Meuse River, and they then faced down into the Somme Valley, cutting off and surrounding Allied units that were planning to meet the Germans in Belgium. But then on the 5th of June 1940, German forces began Case Red, and they pushed the Allies back further, but then the Germans outflanked the Maginot Line and pushed deep into France. On the 14th of June 1940, they occupied Paris unopposed, and the French government then fled, with the French army also collapsing. A surrender or armistice was then negotiated by the French, and the Germans or Nazis would occupy part of the nation, and they also instilled a collaborationist regime known as the Vichy government, which was led by Marshal Philippe Pétain. The Wajbrots as a family allegedly had heard about the death camps and sites of slaughter that were being set up inside of occupied lands in the east, and they also heard that Jewish people were being deported en masse to these sites, where they were then being killed. Wolf's parents feared for their lives, and they would, on the 16th of July 1942, be arrested themselves in Paris. The Wajbrots were Jewish, and they had managed to escape the early roundups inside of the French capital. It's not known why Wolf was not arrested. Maybe he was at work at the time when the Gestapo came calling, but his parents were sent to one of those concentration or extermination camps. Living inside of Paris on his own, Wolf joined the communist resistance group, the FDP-MOI, which was linked to the French resistance. The French resistance were trying their best to fight and resist the German occupation, and they would do whatever they could to disrupt. Inside of French towns and cities, they carried out covert assassinations of collaborators and high-value German military targets, and they also disrupted railway lines, cut communications, and sought to deal with groups that threatened them. The French resistance would also later have to contend with the Milice, a French militia collaborationist force established by the Vichy Prime Minister Pierre Laval, and they were very dangerous because of their expert local knowledge, and the resistance even saw the Milice as more dangerous than the Gestapo or the SS. Wolf's Wajbrots was a key participant and a part of a small Paris-based resistance cell. They were known in particular for their violence, and they carried out attacks upon German soldiers. Just before his 18th birthday, Wolf, who was armed with a grenade, boarded a train carriage which had been reserved for German soldiers, and he then threw a grenade in this before running off the train, and it was claimed by a witness that this attack caused undescribable damage. He was someone who was not intimidated by violent actions and was willing to do this. Let's now think about his mentality. Wolf was just 18 years old and a very young man whose parents had been captured by the Nazis and they had been deported to a concentration camp. This anger and hurt would have been colossal. He also would not have known what happened to them. But by mid-1943, the Germans and their intelligence agencies, including the Gestapo, began to crack down on resistance groups and cells. In particular, they went after Wolf's group, and the leaders of it were captured, and one of them was tortured very heavily. The leader who suffered finally gave over the names of the remaining members of the resistance cell, and Wolf Vajbrotz, along with a number of others, was captured and arrested himself. He was locked up in prison and was tortured for information. The Germans wanted to make sure that they had arrested all of the cell, and they also wanted to know about other groups that were working inside of Paris. Wolf was then taken to a one-day trial, and the pro-Nazi judge did not hold back. He lambasted the young man for his involvement in resistance activities, and with this, he then sentenced him to death. On the 21st of February 1944, Wolf Vajbrotz was taken to Fort Mont Valérien in Paris. It was here where many people who worked as part of the French resistance were also executed, and the executions carried out a similar process. People were brought in small groups and they were made to stand next to an embankment, and opposite them was a German firing squad who were primed and ready with their rifles to bring their lives to an end. Wolf was just 18 years old, let's remember. He was brought out from the back of a truck to the fort's embankment, and stood with him were 3 or 4 other condemned members of the resistance. He was ordered to stand to attention by the German soldiers, and may have even been fastened to a stake. But then the firing squad were commanded to ready their weapons. Some of the group who were to be executed may have shouted resistance slogans or support in their final moments. The commander then gave the order to shoot and fire, and with this the bullets shot straight into Wolf Vajbrotz, and he was one of the youngest French resistance members executed during the Second World War. Wolf was someone who, following his capture, had his photograph shown all over France, and the Nazis used his story as propaganda and claimed that he was part of an army of crime. Following his execution, he was buried in a Paris cemetery, and today his grave contains the words "Mort pour la France," which honours him, saying he gave his life for France. But he was just 18 years old, and he had seen his parents be deported by the Nazis to a concentration camp, and he managed to somehow survive the roundups. The French resistance were a dangerous foe to the German occupiers during World War II, but they knew the risks that faced them. Many were executed during the war for their resistance, and most were shot inside of different forts in French cities and towns. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.